Okay, this is welcome to my channel. This is going to be a walking episode. I hope I'm in frame because I'm holding this and I cannot see how well framed I am. Hopefully it's good enough. So today I was going to talk about something extremely controversial. And it's only controversial if you don't take the time to take information in before reacting to it. So hopefully we have people that are willing to take the time to take information in and then process it against their current information. So let me just check something out. Okay, just verifying that I'm recording. So, I want to talk about God today. And when I talk about that, mainly the concepts of it. And what's up, guys? So, the concept that I want to talk about is there room for that idea, first of all, or at least maybe the structure or framework, can we use it essentially? Or is it harmful? And I first, in my own personal, my own personal background, I've done some research on, I've done a lot of research, a lot of look into theology and the different meanings. Hey guys. Mainly as my own curiosities. So, I guess one of the things that I've been really kind of looking into is the origins of the idea of God, or what the concept, the origin of the concept of God. I'm going to just take a pause here, just because it's awkwardly close to people. Let's take a look at this. Here, you can see the scenery. The sun's going down, so I got to be quick. All right, so the original concept of God, it traces back to the earliest, back into the first writing, really. Like Sumerian, whatever, Sanskrit, all that stuff. They had gods, and their gods were actually really well advanced by that time, which makes me think that we've been at it for a while. We've been thinking about these concepts for a long time. I'm going to take a left here. And I looked up the words. Some of the more popular versions of God are, obviously Christian, Islam. But I really think, and my own personal kind of, opinions have kind of come to the idea that the concept of God as being something greater than us, greater than what we are as a species, as human beings, and something, that sits on top, that, something we can, depending on your beliefs, you can attain to, or something that kind of gives order and meaning to the universe. And I really think that it's a completely, it's a construct that's only necessary with consciousness and the awareness of self. Because when you think about yourself and you think of your place in the universe, we when I say we, by the way, I'm talking about humans. We want to organize everything. We want to categorize everything. And we want to make sense of everything. It's an innate human need. And I think God is just that concept, personified. The idea of organizing everything, or the organization or the meaning or the purpose or the drive. Because when we observe the universe and we observe reality, at every scale there is infinite interactions and just so much going on that leads to so much probability, which leads to, uncalculatable numbers and chances and reality, but basically just entropy. The idea of entropy, right? Everything's changing and it continues to change and it can become more complex. But the idea of God is that there is always order, which in my own personal kind of thinking about complex systems, I've kind of come to the conclusion that basically things that we consider chaotic or, unorganized, they may just be that way because of the way we're perceiving them or the scope of our perception. Like a lot of times when you pull back, you'll begin to see patterns, right? Time is a perfect example of that. And, the study of information and data and reading data, it requires time, right? You can see like one generation of humans, you might not be able to pinpoint trends as easily as if you were to let several generations run out. And as you get further away, more symmetries will begin to emerge. And so where I'm going with this, it's a bit rambly. This is my first time and I started so cold, so thank you so much if you are watching this and this is really experimental. But where I'm going with that idea, that concept, is that if you pull back far enough, you will always see some symmetries. And any thing you look at, any section of reality you look at, there will always be symmetries in the seemingly infinite chaos. And I think that idea, like how do you encapsulate that concept into a word? Symmetry is a nice word, but it's a small concept in comparison to something like that you will always find symmetry, and the bigger perspective you have on reality, the more symmetries you'll be able to see, the more order, basically the less chance there seems to be, the less random. There's less. It seems to be less random, and every little thing begins to become significant, and nothing is insignificant. And that idea reminds me of infinitesimals in number theory or in math. Cool. We're gonna have some noise here pretty soon, so get ready. But anyway, the idea of infinitesimals, right? These tiny little spaces between the integers from 1 to 2, from 0 to 1. From 0 to 1, it's infinite, right? But yet, those whole numbers are finite. And we can count, and we could say there's, this many things by number 2, there's 2 of these things. But when it comes down to the really small stuff, or basically in math, we find that infinitesimals start to matter. And I've come up with this idea that the tiny infinites make the finite world that we see, right? And in math, that seems to be the case. So this idea of God, to me, is this idea of God is kind of like a way to conceptualize intense, deep layers of concepts. And so let me get back to where we're at now in the world and how religion is perceived and how God is perceived. I'm sure that many people, and everyone can, I mean, you could easily come up with arguments to say, no, that's absolutely preposterous, it's inaccurate. Damn, his music's loud. It's not bad. Like, I literally want to start raving. I need glow stick, maybe? I need colored hair. I really do. Every other cool YouTuber has colored hair. This is extremely exhausting on the arm. Ooh, it's gonna get loud. There's a freeway up there. Oh well. So yeah, you can easily argue, say, well, no, that's not. That's just your opinion of God. And yeah, sure, of course it is. But my purpose of talking about this and my hope is that people can take the opportunity to kind of look at their own personal beliefs, and kind of like cross-reference this information. We're getting to a freeway. I'm gonna go the other way. Come with me, back to the music, back to the club, back to the random nature club, because why not? All right, so, what was I saying? Oh, yes. So right now, let's say you're a Christian, for example, and you have your own personal belief of God, that he's a being, all-knowing, infinite, and he created the universe, right? And so, that's something that helps you have meaning in this world. And a lot of atheists and scientists that are atheists and just people that, maybe think that's preposterous, right? Will say, well, you don't need to believe that in order to, to live in this life, like to have a purpose or meaning, right? And of course that's true. But then I think science and atheism, I don't like the word. I think what they need to do is come up with better ways or words or concepts to fit these grand, these hugely complex concepts and ideas and into smaller packets that are more digestible. And maybe this idea will help. Maybe this concept that I'm sharing now will help. The idea that God is just this extreme concept of order in the chaos, which kind of leads to the idea that, well, maybe things aren't really as random as you think. It's only that random because that's all we can perceive at our current scale. Maybe more and more will become available to us, and things will start to make more sense. And maybe the random events, like, these random black holes, right, in the universe, maybe they'll begin to have some symmetry. I already think there is. If at every center of every galaxy there's a black hole, that seems pretty symmetrical. And I wonder what happens when I wonder what symmetries that is, right? What greater image would we get if we could understand why that's the case, or is it a wormhole? Is it a black hole? Whatever. We'll find out. But yeah, so as you can see, it's I hope it's not too offensive, idea or concept, but it's something I wanted to get off my chest because I've been thinking about it. And I've kind of looked at the words like, for example, Elohim, right? It's a famous, I don't want to say famous, but it's a well-known name of God. And if you go back into I kind of searched on the internet, the origins of that word, the root words, the meanings, and I found, the closest ways I could find, it was like, it's plural, first of all. Monotheism. I'm just kidding. It's plural, And it has something to do with common, or, you know. And so in my head, I was like, well, in my little pea brain, I say, well, common, it's like common everything. It's like everything, you know, it is everything, right? And I was like, well, what if it's like that concept, right? It's like, it's the shape of everything, right? Or the all-encompassing everything, right? Or the order of everything. And if that's the case, what a beautiful word and concept, right? A lot of people will say, God is everything. And if that's the case, well, then we are God, right? We won't get into that. Sorry if that was really loud. I just realized. But a lot of people say, well, God is love, or, you know, all these things. But I think where the problem starts to come into, like, where the problems have arisen in the past and seem to be still kind of a big problem now, is once we as humans try to take these grand scale, multi-dimensional, many-layer, multiple across time concepts and make them more physical, right? More digestible, you know, then we seem to fall into some trouble, because we have religions now that, you know, their definition of God is well defined. You know, this is what it is, and the rules are laid out, and it seems as though there's no argument to be had, there's no dialogue to be had, there's no discourse, right? That is just what it is. Why? Well, because we have these scriptures, right, or these sacred texts, you know, which are compiled across who knows how many, you know, they're just compilations of sacred texts that paint a picture of well, I would argue that they do this, but they paint a picture of a very, you know, well-defined path, a well-defined meaning and purpose, right? And I think that's harmful. I mean, I think it can be harmful, right? But then I go back to, I think it can be beneficial to have a framework of order, or at least this beautiful way to kind of think about reality, and that, yes, it's unknown. There's unknowns, and everything is unknown, and life is unknown, and, you know, really, no one knows. You know, no one knows anything really. I mean, we're just kind of just stumbling through. All of us are. Me too. Everyone. But if you have like a compass, if you have a compass for the unknown, you know, these concepts, these deep guiding concepts that we see in nature itself, right? Like, look at this. I don't know if you can see these things. But like this is this shape, this pattern, right? These splitting patterns. You have a source, and then a point where it separates, and then these all kind of become eventually something like this. I don't know if this is going to come across or not, but, you know, this pattern is in our brains, right? Neurons. This pattern, if you look at superclusters in the galaxy, this fractal kind of pattern, it's our superclusters of galaxies, right? They look kind of like neurons and very, you know, very branching. You know, that's what crystals are. They're growth. They build layer upon layer, and they make a lattice, right? So those concepts, you know, that's a beautiful thing, I think. And it can be cross-denominational. I don't know if that's the right word. It can apply, it can fit into any human being, right? Without having to divide humanity, which I think is a cool concept. Hence my channel name, Infinite Humanity. But yeah, so I just wanted to rant about that. hopefully you stuck around long enough. Hopefully it's coherent. I don't know if it is, but we'll find out when I watch this later. Thank you guys for tuning in. I will be back. Maybe I'll clarify some more of this concept the next time, but probably not, because who knows, the way my brain works, it's very, so the next one might be a completely different subject. It might even be about video games. In fact, it might be, because I've been thinking about video games or simulations. Anyway, peace.